My next-door neighbor is this rugged guy with a buzz cut, a deep tan, and lean muscle. His favorite thing to do is work with his shirt off. So, can anyone tell me? How am I supposed to look away? Later, he held my waist and called me a little perv. I was straddling his hips, my hands tracing his abs. Hey now, I whispered. Pervs live forever. No. Staring at the imposing man before me, I couldn't help but shrink back. But he grabbed my ankle and yanked me between his legs. The dark undercurrent swirling in his eyes was intensely aggressive. My escape failed. I could only accept my punishment. Just as I was about to experience that feeling of a firework fizzling out mid-air, a wave of disappointment washed over me. It was just a dream. I'd dreamt about my neighbor and our little encounters again. Shaking the images from my head, I stretched and walked out into the yard to sunbathe. My 20/20 vision instantly spotted something that didn't belong in my yard. A man's underwear. I was stunned. It was hanging brazenly on the seat of my e-bike. I glanced left and right. This had to belong to my rugged neighbor, Jack. Whenever I saw him, he always had this cold, keep your distance vibe. Curiosity got the better of me. I walked over, picked them up, and gave them a good look. Not bad. He was definitely packing. Thinking back to the bulge I'd snuck a peek at before, I felt a shameful blush creep up my face. Usually, he wouldn't even give me the time of day if I tried to talk to him. Let's see if he comes looking for me this time. Jack, with his buzz cut and tan, didn't show up until evening. He was wearing a loose white tank top, his nipples faintly visible. Veins popped on his brawny arms, running all the way to the back of his hands. The sight sent my imagination running wild and made my cheeks burn. Excuse me, did the wind blow any of my things into your yard? He was so nonchalant, you'd think he'd lost a shirt, not his underwear. I forced myself to stay calm. Well, I did find a pair of underwear. Not sure if they're yours. He gave a cool HM, but a flicker of embarrassment crossed his face. They're mine. I raised an eyebrow and handed them to him. His rough palm brushed against the back of my hand before he slowly took them. Thanks. The warmth of his touch seemed to linger on my skin, spreading straight to my heart. I stared at him, wondering how he could be so composed, taking his private garments from a woman without even blushing. The next second, he leaned in close, his deep, husky voice whispering right by my ear. A tingly, electric feeling shot through my whole body. I'll treat you to lunch tomorrow, as a thank you. And with that, he was gone, his powerful hands carrying his things. I opened my mouth to explain, but his long legs had already carried him through his front door. The thought of having lunch at his place tomorrow had me bouncing off the walls with excitement. Another chance to admire that body. I seriously wanted to jump on my bed. Every day, the smell of food cooking from his house made me want to kidnap him and make him my personal chef. Looks like I was in for a treat. The price of my excitement was a sleepless night. The rooster was crowing by the time I finally drifted off. A knock on the door woke me up. I groggily stumbled over to open it. It was Jack. Dressed for the summer heat, he looked so cool and refreshing that I couldn't help but stare. He coughed lightly into his fist, his eyes darting away, looking a little awkward. Lunch is ready. Get yourself together and come over. That snapped me back to reality. I quickly agreed. It was only when I went back to my room to change that I realized what a dumb thing I'd just done. I was wearing a slip dress, braless, and Jack had probably gotten a perfect view. I splashed some water on my face, took a deep breath, and marched over to his house. Hi, Grandma. Hi, Grandpa. I greeted Jack's grandparents sweetly. His grandma pointed me toward the kitchen. Jack was in there, getting the last dish ready. Let me help you with the fire, I volunteered. You don't have to, you. I know how, trust me, I said, already sitting on the little stool by the wood stove. Actually, Jack hadn't been back yet when I first rented this place. I'd gotten to know his grandparents pretty well before he showed up. He was their grandson. His grandma had made a point of telling me that Jack was single. He expertly tossed some shrimp into the hot oil. Total husband material. I leaned in for a closer look when a piece of bamboo in the stove suddenly popped, sending a spark onto my clothes. Jack rushed over and started patting my shirt, terrified I'd gotten burned. I seized the opportunity, placing my hand on his bare arm, feeling the powerful muscle and giving it a little squeeze. Jack stopped what he was doing and gave me an unreadable look. I awkwardly pulled my hand back. I was fine, and so was my dress. Seeing his worried face, I got myself promptly escorted out of the kitchen. Once all the food was on the table, I went to get some rice, but he beat me to it. Just a little, just a little. I can't eat that much. Jack frowned slightly. How can you eat so little? I can. I want some shrimp. My eyes were glued to the shrimp platter. His grandparents filled their bowls and then went to chat with the neighbors. Jack ate fast, but his movements weren't crude. I was only halfway through my bowl when he'd already finished too. The shrimp were hard to peel, so I was eating slowly. Take your time, he said softly. He washed his hands and came back to the table and started peeling shrimp. I watched his long, nimble fingers work at the shells. His hands were beautiful. Lost in thought, I was swinging my crossed leg, dangling my foot. My slipper flew off, and the top of my bare foot landed right against his calf. I froze, feeling the muscle in his leg tense up. Even through his thin pants, his body heat felt like it was going to melt me. His face remained as cold and unreadable as ever. I was scared, but my leg was completely stiff. I wanted to say something to break the awkwardness, but he just kept peeling shrimp. I buried my head in my bowl and ate, and it took me a long while to pull my leg back. But now my slipper was under his chair. Finish this plate of shrimp. He placed the entire plate of peeled shrimp in front of me. For some reason, I heard a hint of indulgence in his voice. I nodded dumbly, my heart bursting with joy. While he was in the kitchen, I hopped over on one foot, trying to get my slipper back on. What are you doing? I froze mid-hop, mortified. The next second, as he walked toward me, I lost my balance. Jack swept me up in a bridal-style carry. I took the chance to feel up his arm again. He shot me a dark look, then set me down on a chair, found my slipper, and put it on for me. My eyes went wide. He was putting my shoe on for me. His large hand gripped my ankle, the contrast between my pale skin and his dark complexion making my heart race. Oh my God, is my ship finally coming in? The next day, I went into town to buy a few things. I walked right up to Jack's door with meat and vegetables in hand. When he opened the door shirtless, a brilliant smile spread across my face. I'll provide the ingredients if you cook. We can eat together, okay? He took the bags from me and stepped aside to let me in. As I walked past him with a smile, he whispered by my ear, "Don't bring anything next time." I paused and turned to look at him with a pitiful expression. He looked down, his gaze meeting mine, hot and restrained. "Just tell me what you want to eat ahead of time. I'll make it." He turned and walked into the kitchen, leaving me to admire his powerful back. Broad shoulders, narrow waist, great butt, long legs. Damn. Some things are worth dying for. The moment I stepped into the kitchen, his expression darkened. He was fine just a second ago. Why the sudden mood change? A man's heart is as fickle as the weather. Impossible to figure out. Go on, go have fun. I'm not using the wood stove today, he explained. I raised an eyebrow. It was definitely because of last time. He was afraid I'd be more trouble than help. But he wasn't wearing a shirt, just an apron tied around his waist. His abs and nipples were peeking out, and the muscles in his arms had my eyes glued to him. I have to say it, lean muscle is everything. There was no way I was leaving. I buzzed around him like a little bee. He didn't say anything more. Instead, he brought out a huge watermelon. He washed it and cut me a big slice. A hot summer day calls for a cold, juicy watermelon. After I finished the first slice, he handed me another. I looked at him, surprised, but he just put the rest away and started cooking. For some reason, seeing him so serious made me want to tease him. While he was washing vegetables, I held a piece of watermelon up to his mouth. He turned his head and looked at me, confused. I pouted, my eyes shining. "You have some too. Look, you're all sweaty." I even reached out and wiped a bead of sweat from his forehead. His kitchen was pretty stuffy. His expression was unreadable, but he took a bite of the watermelon in my hand. He just opened up a whole new world for me. I kept circling him until he'd eaten the whole slice. Some juice dripped down, and Jack casually licked it from my hand. Then he went back to cooking as if nothing had happened. I was frozen to the spot again, my face turning beet red. Ah! He licked my hand. The juice dripped onto my hand, and he licked it off. The calm surface of my heart was now a stormy sea of churning waves. Pressing my advantage, I took out the little handkerchief I'd brought from home and started dabbing the sweat from his brow. Eventually, he couldn't take it anymore and kicked me out of the kitchen. I sat in the yard, watching his silhouette in the kitchen. So handsome, with abs, and he can cook. For a man this good, it looks like I'm going to have to make the first move. Before I could make my move, someone else beat me to it. I had dressed up especially nicely to go to his place today. But when I got there, a quirky, pixie-like girl was already sitting in the yard. "Emily, honey, come here. I want you to meet someone," Jack's grandma called me over. "This is Zoe. She's old Mrs. Wang's granddaughter from down the road." I smiled and said hello. She seemed a little reluctant to reciprocate. You know, she used to follow Jack around all the time, always yelling, "Jackie, Jackie." Now look how grown up she is. At that, Zoe jumped in. "That's because Jackie is my favorite." I could tell from her eyes that she was testing me. I just smiled and listened to them chat, chiming in with a question here and there. Feeling too awkward to sit there any longer, I got up to help in the kitchen. When Jack saw me, he had the same cold expression as always. For once, he was wearing a short-sleeved shirt, not a tank top or nothing at all. I said hi. He grunted in response. I offered to help. He said he didn't need any, that he could handle it himself. Leaning against the doorframe, I watched him and thought he'd be perfect as a monk. I thought that was just his personality, naturally cold. But he was completely different with Zoe. "Jackie, you haven't been back in so long." Zoe whined, her voice full of playful complaint. A faint smile touched Jack's lips. "I've been busy." Zoe asked questions, and Jack answered. I felt like a total third wheel, a sour, pathetic, totally pointless one. Annoyed, I turned and left the kitchen, sitting in the yard to look at his grandma's flowers. I was so lost in thought, staring at the flowers, that I didn't hear Jack call my name twice. It wasn't until he walked over and bent down to call my name that I snapped out of it. My eyes drifted down the collar of his shirt, trying to get a peek at the scenery inside. "Sorry, I was just thinking about something." He gave me a strange look. "Time to eat." The spread today was even more lavish than usual. "Zoe, you should come over more often. Look, your Jackie made all this food just because you're here." "Zoe, isn't this spicy fish your favorite? Go on, eat up. He made it just for you." I kept a smile plastered on my face, but the food tasted like wax. I could only watch as Zoe sat next to Jack, chattering away about stories from school. And Jack, a faint smile on his face, played the part of the perfect listener. "Emily, why aren't you eating the fish?" "You should eat more fish, it's good for you," his grandma said warmly. I agreed out loud, but my chopsticks never went near the platter. While Zoe was busy putting food on his plate, I boldly slid my leg over to touch his. Jack's expression stiffened for a moment before quickly returning to normal. He didn't move, letting me get away with every little tease I could think of. After dinner, I immediately made an excuse to leave. "Have some watermelon before you go," Jack said, one of the few times he'd initiated a conversation with me. I glanced at Zoe standing behind him and politely declined. "Let little sister Zoe have it. I'm not a big fan." Once I got home, I immediately went out and bought 2 huge watermelons to keep at my place. So, Jack was single, but he had a childhood sweetheart a few years younger than him. Seeing how they were together, it was clear I didn't stand a chance. "Fine. I'm out." It was just a passing fancy, a crush based on looks anyway. Lying on my chair with the fan on, eating watermelon, I just couldn't shake this feeling of dissatisfaction. Why wasn't the watermelon I bought as sweet as the one Jack bought? I stopped going over to Jack's house after that day. The first day, he came looking for me when I didn't show up for lunch. I didn't want to see him, so I just hid inside. He thought I wasn't home and left. The second day, I figured I couldn't keep hiding. I stood in front of him, my expression sincere. "Thank you, and thank your grandparents, for letting me freeload for so many meals. I'm a night owl and have trouble waking up for lunch, so you don't have to call me anymore. Thanks." His eyes were as calm as still water, but a dark mood seemed to radiate off him. He was really something else. It was a scorching day, but standing next to him, I could actually feel a chill. He didn't say a word, just turned and walked away. A few moments later, I heard Zoe's laughter again. For the past few days, her voice was a constant presence next door. For some reason, that laughter was tying my heart in knots. I bought some milk and fruit. When I knew Jack wasn't home, I brought them over for his grandparents. I told them the same thing I'd told Jack. Just as I was thinking it was about time to leave, he came back. Seeing that I was about to go, he reached out and grabbed my arm. "Stay for dinner. It's just you." I was about to refuse, but then he added that last part out of nowhere. It left me completely stuck, not knowing whether to stay or go. In the end, I sat obediently beside his grandma and waited for dinner. I hadn't eaten his cooking in days, and I really did miss it. My attention was entirely on the food. I didn't spare a single glance for the shirtless Jack. I couldn't control myself at dinner and ate a little more than usual. Mainly because Jack was acting strange today, constantly putting food on my plate. In a couple of days, Zoe's sister, Julia, is getting married. "You and Jack should go have some fun," his grandma suddenly said. "You came to the countryside to relax, didn't you? Go hang out with the young people. It must be boring staying at home all day." Faced with her thoughtful suggestion, I could only nod in agreement. The wedding customs here were a little different. The bride's family hosts a banquet the day before the wedding, with drinking and dancing starting in the evening. It was a lively affair. I ate with Jack's grandma during the feast. When the drinking and dancing started, his grandparents went home to rest. I watched the locals singing and dancing. It was so festive. They formed a circle to dance, and Jack pulled me in to join them. His large, rough hand held mine, and the feeling of our skin rubbing together sent a jolt of excitement through my brain. I don't know if it was the heat or my own racing heart. My palms started getting sweatier and sweatier. Embarrassed, I told him I was getting tired. He led me to a quieter spot off to the side and even went to get me some water. "Aren't you having any?" I saw a slight flush on his cheeks, probably from the heat. "You drink." "I'm not thirsty." That's what he said, but as I drank, I heard him swallow and felt his intense gaze on me. When I was done, he snatched the water bottle from my hand and chugged from it. Watching his Adam's apple bob and his chest rise and fall, I couldn't help but blush and sneak glances at him. "Jackie, there you are. Come on, have a drink with me." Zoe came right up, grabbed Jack's hand, and pulled him away. He glanced back at me once. I remained sitting where I was, my face a mask of indifference. Watching Zoe and Jack having so much fun, I suddenly felt like going home. After sitting for a little while longer, I quietly got up and left. The moon was beautiful tonight, bright enough to light the path. "Emily?" I heard Jack's voice behind me. I froze for a second, then pretended I hadn't heard and kept walking. I hadn't gone more than a few steps before he caught up. He grabbed my arm. "Why did you leave?" Of course, he wasn't even out of breath after running all that way. Just a slight quickening of his breathing. But he was standing so close to me that I could feel his breath on my face. I turned my head to look at him. I suddenly felt dizzy and tight in my chest. I wanted to go home and rest. His voice was a little urgent. "What's wrong? Where does it hurt?" He bent down, one hand on my arm, the other on my forehead, his face very close to mine. The concern in his eyes was undeniable. I felt like he was acting strange tonight. He was usually never this talkative with me. It's probably just the heat. I'll be fine once I get home and cool off by the fan. His breath ghosted across my cheek. He looked at me, seeming to want to say something but holding back. "Jackie? Why did you leave?" "I still have something to tell you." Zoe's voice came from behind us, and the budding emotion inside me instantly cooled. I took a step back and gave Jack a little push. Then I turned and walked away. Summer nights are restless. I was dreaming about Jack again. He wasn't his usual cold self. This time, he was passionate as fire. Shirtless, he climbed onto my bed and started nuzzling my face like a little kitten. Being the perv that I am, how could I let such a golden opportunity pass? I reached out to touch him. But the moment my hand hit a critical spot, he vanished. The disappointment from my dream was shattered by a knock on the door. I checked the time. It was only 3 a.m. Who would be knocking on my door in the middle of the night? I tiptoed into the yard and listened to the sounds outside. The person was still knocking, persistent. I hesitated. "Emily. Open the door." I frowned. The voice was huskier than usual, but I recognized it. When he saw me standing at the door, Jack paused, his eyes unfocused. The dark undercurrent I saw in them made my heart pound. "It's so late. What are you doing knocking on my door instead of going home?" "I'll walk you back." I went to help him, but he suddenly pushed me against the wall. The smell of alcohol on him was strong. I didn't dare move. Damn it. Of course, I was only wearing that slip dress again. His head rested on my shoulder, his breath warming my skin. The tickling sensation made me flinch, which he must have mistaken for me trying to leave, because he pressed even closer. Our bodies were flush against each other in an intimate pose. I put my hands on his chest and pushed. "Jack." He just grunted, capturing both of my hands with one of his, and started nuzzling his head all over the place. It tickled so much I wanted to laugh. His breathing was ragged, his voice strained and full of restraint. I don't want them to worry. So he was afraid of worrying his grandparents. I lowered my voice and tried to soothe him. "Okay, then let me go first. I'll take you to your room to rest." He didn't answer. Instead, he gripped my hand firmly and led me back into my house, to my room. He lifted me onto the bed, pushed me toward the inside, and then lay down on the outer edge. He held me tightly. Feeling the warmth of our bodies together, everything felt so wonderful. If only I could ignore the hard thing pressing into my back. Remembering what Zoe had said, my heart felt like it was being scratched by a cat's paw. I couldn't sleep. I turned to ask him, but he was already fast asleep. So, are he and Zoe a thing or not? When I woke up, the person beside me was long gone. Looks like he just drank too much last night and came to the wrong house. And it seems like he and Zoe are a done deal. If he was interested in me, why would he leave without a word? This time, I was completely over it. It's okay if we can't be together. It's not like we ever crossed that line. We can still be friends. It won't stop me from admiring a handsome guy. For the next few days, Jack didn't show his face. One day after a rainstorm, Zoe came to Jack's house, saying she wanted to go pick mushrooms. I overheard from next door and was eager to join. I want to go too. Take me with you, please, please. I begged Zoe playfully. Zoe was a little surprised by my friendly overture and turned to Jack for his opinion. Let's go together. Zoe was puzzled. The guy who had just been adamant about not going had suddenly changed his mind. She didn't care. She had already made a deal with Jack that night to be his intern. Zoe's eyes darted between the two of us. I took 2 steps back to avoid any suspicion. I couldn't get involved in their romance. At most, I'd just sneak a peek at his body for eye candy. Because it had rained the night before, the path up the mountain was slick. I finally understood why Zoe had been staring at my white sneakers. They were now yellow. When I slipped, Jack reached out a hand. I quickly regained my footing and dodged his hand. He slowly pulled his hand back, his expression calm and silent. Zoe, however, took my hand. At this rate, we won't pick a single mushroom before dark. Despite her sassy tone, I gratefully took her fair hand. Wow, so many mushrooms. Can we eat all of these? Jack stayed by my side, explaining which ones were edible and which were poisonous. Zoe navigated the mountain path with ease, while I walked shakily ahead of Jack. Suddenly, my foot slipped, and I was about to tumble down the slope. Jack's large hand shot out and pulled me into his arms, holding me tight. His strong arm wrapped around my waist, my back pressed firmly against his chest. My heart was pounding like a drum. Then I realized his heart was pounding just as hard. Blood rushed to my cheeks. It felt like the world had narrowed to just the sound of our 2 heartbeats. I looked at his downcast eyes, his long lashes casting a shadow, the swirling undertow threatening to swallow me whole. Just as I was about to fall completely under his spell, I remembered Zoe was waiting up ahead. A thrilling, forbidden shame washed over me, and I struggled. Don't move, he murmured, his voice as pleasant as ever. If you move again, we're both going down. And somehow, in that moment, I fell for him all over again. While picking mushrooms, I stuck close to Zoe the entire time, all the way back down the mountain to Jack's house. His grandfather saw all the mushrooms we'd collected and happily started telling us their names. I looked at their full baskets, then at the few pathetic mushrooms in mine, and my heart sank. Jackie, these mushrooms are for you. My boyfriend and I will be in your care now, so please look after us. Zoe said with a smile, handing over half of her mushrooms. You have a boyfriend? I asked, completely shocked. Zoe was as sassy as ever. What's so surprising about having a boyfriend? It's perfectly normal. Don't tell me. You don't have one yet? She teased. My face flushed. It's perfectly normal not to have a boyfriend, you know. Did you hear that, Jackie? She doesn't have a boyfriend. You should try a little harder. That was the last thing Zoe said before she left. I looked at Jack with a complicated expression, only to see his own expression crack a little. I felt like I had just stumbled upon something huge. But after he left my house that night, he hadn't said a single word to me. Pretending I didn't understand, I left my mushrooms and went home. The next day was bright and sunny. I found another pair of his underwear in my yard, covered in dust. I washed them and hung them up to dry. In the afternoon, a tank top floated down. I picked it up. I looked up at his second-floor balcony. No one was there. There wasn't a hint of wind today. I deliberately took his things into my house. Sure enough, he came over that afternoon. And what do you know, he was shirtless again. I couldn't help but stare a little longer. His muscles looked even more defined. Are any of my things? Nope. I stared at his sharp jawline, my face straight, my heart steady. He frowned, looking thoughtful. Grandpa wants you to come for dinner. We're having mushrooms today. The thought of fresh mushrooms was too tempting. I agreed. Jack's habit of not wearing a shirt was back. Staring at his chest, I had a moment of clarity. When Zoe was around, he wore a shirt. No wonder I'd felt something was off about him those few days. It was because he was fully clothed. Besides mushrooms, the menu today also included my favorite shrimp, but this time they were shelled. He put some shrimp in my bowl. Eat up. Seeing his serious face, I put some on his plate too. You too. You need to replenish your strength. He paused, his movements a little stiff. I watched, delighted. Being a perv was definitely more fun. There was a pile of firewood in the yard. An old perv like me knew at a glance that Jack would be chopping it soon. After dinner, I sat leisurely in the shade, eagerly awaiting the show. My rugged man even cut up a watermelon into small cubes for me, complete with a fork. The more I looked at him now, the more I liked what I saw. As he swung the axe, the muscles on his body tensed and bulged. Beads of sweat trickled down the lines of his muscles. I watched, mesmerized. So, do you like him? His grandma sat down next to me, a sly smile on her face. My face grew hot. I didn't know whether to nod or shake my head. Like what? Jack walked over, wiping the sweat from his brow with a towel. Nothing. You must be tired. Have some watermelon. Flustered, I stood up and forcefully fed him a piece of watermelon. He glanced at the fruit, then opened his mouth and ate it. Beneath his calm gaze, a powerful current churned. Watching his Adam's apple bob as he swallowed, my mind filled with filthy thoughts. I fled in a panic that day. That night, I got an invitation to my college reunion. It was only while packing that I found the items I had hidden. Looking at them now, and thinking of his perpetually hormone-charged presence, my heart began to flutter. I packed my bags, planning to stay with my best friend for a few days, and headed out. Are you moving out? Jack was staring at my suitcase, his face dark, his tone demanding. No, I'm going to a class reunion, and then I'm crashing at a friend's place for a couple of days. At that, his expression softened a little. I'll drive you. With him, I had no right to refuse. And then I watched as the rugged man from my dreams pulled up in a luxury car, wearing a sharp suit. I was stunned. Zoe's comment about him being a boss flashed in my mind. He really was a boss. That rough, rustic vibe had instantly transformed into a look of restrained, wild intensity. I was even more in love. What was I going to do? What are you spacing out for? Get in. He was quite the gentleman, putting my suitcase in the trunk and ushering me into the car himself. After giving him the address, I started to feel drowsy. I was woken up by a kiss. The scene from my dream was playing out in reality. My eyes flew open to see the man in front of me, eyes closed, kissing me. My mind was a mess. The feeling of his lips on mine made my temperature rise, and I couldn't help but squirm. Jack lingered on my lips, breathing hard. His eyes were hazy with restraint. When a serious person gets emotional, their gaze is incredibly intense. As he pulled back, I quickly shot up and pecked him on the lips, smiling sweetly. Thanks for the ride today. That was for the fare. But he just chuckled, which was completely out of character. His laugh made my heart bloom. He was so handsome when he smiled. Why hadn't he ever smiled for me before? He got my suitcase for me, and after getting back in the car, he stuck his head out the window. I'm here on business too. Call me if you need anything. I looked at his lips, then grabbed his head and pulled him in for another kiss. Using all the moves I'd only ever imagined, I kissed him senseless. Treat me to dinner sometime. I've already paid. Gleefully, I turned, grabbed my suitcase, and walked away. Leaving behind a thoroughly kissed stupid rugged man, frozen in place. They say college reunions are just a stage for showing off, and they're not wrong. I was chatting with my old roommate about my rugged neighbor when a girl next to me nudged me with her elbow. Emily, you'd better watch out, she warned kindly. I looked up and saw him, the scumbag from my college days who cast a wide net and flirted with everyone. His wife was the woman who used to be my best friend. The scumbag had tried to pursue me, but my so-called best friend at the time couldn't stand seeing anyone be nice to me and swooped in to steal him away. I just shrugged it off. We could all just mind our own business. Emily, how come you didn't bring a boyfriend? Couldn't find anyone? My former best friend was as sharp-tongued as ever, and the scumbag stood beside her, arrogant and proud. I frowned. This whole act was so tired. Why was she still trying to play this game? Wow, your mouth is still as foul as ever. How do you two even manage to kiss? She was shameless, only a faint blush coloring her cheeks. Before she could speak, I continued, "Oh, is that a new bag Kevin bought you?" She preened when she saw me notice her bag. "It's a gift from Kevin. It's worth over $10,000, you know. This is the only one like it in the whole city. I'm not trying to be mean, but as an old friend, I'm just giving you some advice. You should hurry up and find someone to marry, so you don't have to work so hard. You can just ask your husband for whatever you want, right, honey?" Kevin stroked Jessica's hair condescendingly. "You've got good taste, babe." The two of them ganged up on me, but I just shrugged. Once I'd had my fill of food and drink, my rugged man made his grand entrance. Buzz cut, tan skin, tall frame, and a sharp black suit. He looked absolutely incredible. "Sorry, I'm late." As for their taunts, all I had to say was that Jessica's bag was a fake and Kevin was a cheater. After wiping the floor with everyone at the reunion with my rugged man by my side, I made a glorious exit. Jack and I drove back to the countryside that same night. He walked me to my door. Seeing that I was about to go inside without a word, he pulled me into his arms. I crashed into his chest, my face pressed against his beating heart. "Don't you have anything to say to me?" I didn't answer his question, just hugged him tighter. But he wasn't satisfied. He leaned in and kissed me forcefully. I was no match for a rugged man's strength, and I had no intention of refusing anyway. I pretended to passively accept it. His kiss moved over my lips, slow and deliberate, igniting a fire inside me. Just as my breathing grew ragged, his kisses trailed from my lips to my neck, sending shivers down my spine and a tingling numbness all over. A cool breeze blew past, clearing my head slightly. I pushed him away and darted back into my house, leaving Jack standing alone outside my door. I had originally thought we should wait until we were officially together to do things like that. But lately, my dreams had been getting more and more explicit, and I was getting more and more frustrated. Especially seeing Jack practically walking around naked in front of me every day. My mind was in overdrive. Finally, I caught him on a day he went to a friend's party and came back drunk. I watched him stumble to my door, call my name a few times, and even call my phone. I ignored him. I sat in my yard for a while, watching the light in Jack's room turn on, then off. When I thought enough time had passed, I pulled out the key I had swiped from him that day. I snuck into Jack's house and went up to the second floor. The door to Jack's room opened with a simple twist of the knob. I was relieved I didn't have to use the key. On a summer night, the moonlight was so bright I could immediately see Jack on the bed. He must have been hot, because he was sleeping sprawled out in just a pair of shorts. Not even a blanket. By the moonlight, I admired his body, my desire stirring. I called his name softly twice. No response. I tiptoed to his bed, climbed on, and eagerly ran my hands over his flesh. The heat from his skin and the masculine scent in the air were intoxicating. My eyes followed the V-line of his abs down to that special place, and my mouth went dry. I swallowed hard, gathered my courage, and straddled him. The second I was on top of him, his body heat nearly melted me. I moved gently, leaning down to peck his lips. I caught a faint whiff of alcohol. I frowned. Wasn't he supposed to be wasted? There should have been more of a smell. I started to sit up, planning to feel his abs, when the man beneath me suddenly opened his eyes and clamped a hand on the back of my head. "Where are you going?" "Keep going." His voice was rough and deep. It struck my heart like a hammer, sending ripples through my entire body. You. Weren't you asleep? He pecked my neck again and again. If I were really asleep, how would I catch a little thief like you? So he knew my intentions. Caught red-handed, my face flushed. I tried to sound tough. I'm not a thief. What did I steal? You tell me. His calloused hand roamed over my waist, stroking endlessly. You stole a man. I frowned. I did not. He bit my earlobe. I say you did, so you did. He pressed down on my hips and gave a light thrust. I had all the nerve but none of the courage. Feeling a different side of Jack, I got scared and tried to get off. But he held me down firmly. Looks like walking around shirtless in front of you all the time really paid off. I stared at him, stunned. He let out a soft laugh. Had to go shirtless to get a little perv like you to take the bait. As the realization dawned on me, I stayed in position and reached out a trembling hand to touch his abs. Hey now, I purred. Pervs live forever. I was so wrong. I will never dare to steal a man in the middle of the night again. I never imagined someone would deliberately go shirtless to seduce me, let alone pretend to be drunk to lure me into his trap. A person like me, who acts on impulse and lust, can never win against a man who comes prepared. My whole body ached. I couldn't move. But I had gotten the man I'd been dreaming of, and I was deeply satisfied. Looking at the torn wrappers scattered all over the floor, I could only sigh. No wonder they say fortune favors the prepared. Someone unprepared like me could only be tormented. The person behind me moved closer, pulling me into his embrace with a gentle tug. His breath tickled my ear. I didn't know how to face him, so I just pretended to be asleep. But then something behind me began to change, and I panicked, trying to break free from his hold. His grip, however, was strong and unyielding. Don't move. Move again and you'll face the consequences. He took a deep breath at my neck, then slowly exhaled. You know, they always said girls smell nice. I never believed it. I never knew you could smell so good, so sweet, and feel so soft. Later, Jack officially asked me out, giving me the whole romantic ceremony. We were together. I also found out that his grandma had been playing wingman for him the whole time. I looked at her, surprised, and she gave me a mischievous smile. I could tell you two were fated to be together. I was so embarrassed I could have died. Jack's epilogue. For a while now, my grandma had been calling me non-stop, telling me some young girl had rented the empty house next door. She said the girl was fair-skinned, kind, and beautiful, and that I had to come back and see for myself. I sighed. Grandma never stops worrying. After wrapping up my work, I gave myself a short vacation. The first time I saw Emily, I realized Grandma had only described half of her. She wasn't just fair, she was like a newly blossomed flower glistening with dew. She made you want to mess her up a little. After a few days of being around her, I realized she was like a little hamster, staring at me like I was her personal stockpile of food. Once I figured out what she liked, I was grateful for my regular workouts and all the chores I did for my grandparents. From then on, whenever we were in the same place, I almost never wore a shirt, letting her gaze wander over me freely. I used it as an excuse to touch her little hand or her waist, but she was so innocent, she never caught on to my intentions. Even after I gave her some direct hints with my actions, she was still clueless. The day she went to the city, I thought I'd scared her off and that she was moving away. I felt helpless, but then she explained she was just going to a reunion. I was instantly relieved. Watching her sleep in the passenger seat, her lips slightly parted, I admit I couldn't resist. Even if she found out, the softness of her lips was worth any price. When we got back, I noticed the little girl was keeping her distance from me, but she was still watching me from afar. Then I realized my key was missing. I remembered that video she'd watched about a girl climbing through a window at night to seduce a guy, and I couldn't help but sigh. Why did this kid have to learn all the sneaky tricks instead of the good stuff? What could I do? I had to play along. She was such a silly fish. All I had to do was dangle a hook, and she took the bait. As our breaths mingled and I saw the tears welling in her eyes, I couldn't help but feel relieved that I was the one she'd met. Holding my girl in my arms. It was pure satisfaction. But she's a bit delicate. She was tired out after just 2 rounds. I'll have to help her build up her stamina. Right, and I still need to give her a proper romantic proposal. The silvery moonlight illuminated the trash on the floor. I felt a pang of regret. Maybe I'd been a bit too much. Looking at the sleeping girl with a heart full of tenderness, I gave her a soft peck on the lips and couldn't resist pulling her closer. And with her, I drifted off to sleep.